Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy that we have the chance today to speak to Linda Lai, the chairperson, the vice chairperson of the independent new media art institution Videotage in Hong Kong, and Angela Leung, the programs manager of Videotage. Linda and Angela are both in Hong Kong. Hello to Hong Kong. It's early evening. I'm here in Berlin, in the Times Art Center Berlin, in the exhibition Readings from Below, which I curated. My name is Ariane Beyn. I'm an independent curator based in Berlin, and this talk is part of the public program of this exhibition. The public program has its own title. It's called Why an Archive? And it's presented by Times Art Center Berlin in collaboration with the Arsenal Institute for Film and Video Art. It consists of a film program and a series of talks. This is the first one of these talks. The film program was curated by me in close collaboration with the three archives, Videotage, Asia Art Archive, and Video Bureau. It is shown online in the online cinema of Arsenal 3 for the whole month of November as part of the long-term project Archive außer sich. It sounds a little bit complicated, but it is actually a very fortunate collaboration between several different institutions and projects that came together here. The exhibition Readings from Below is bringing together works that approach the present via the archive in the widest sense. If you're interested to find out more about the exhibition, then please either come here if you have the chance to come, or check out the online publication that accompanies the exhibition. For our public program, we wanted to look at the actual practices of three of the most influential, independently run and founded archives from Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and Beijing, in order to learn more about their hybrid forms, their activities within and beyond the digital realm, their practices and ways to build community and to generate far-reaching networks of knowledge production and exchange. And the first step was to ask them to collaborate with us on a film program. And the second step is to enter into a conversation with them, which we're doing today. So let me briefly introduce our two guests. I'm starting with Linda. Linda Lai is a well-known video artist, curator, researcher, and art historian who has been working on the intersection of experimental video art, interactive media, and cultural history, exploring, for example, intermediality, cybertextuality, and visual ethnography in her art and research. Her works have been shown worldwide in key institutions and festivals. In Germany, for example, her works have been shown in the competition of the International Short Film Festival in Oberhausen several times, and she has shown works in the festival Rencontres Internationales Paris-Berlin at the House of the Cultures of the World in Berlin. Linda is also the founder of a media art collective called the Writing Machine Collective that brings together art and computational thinking. And she runs an independent art space called Floating Projects in Hong Kong, which is an experiment on modes of sustainability in art making. She holds a PhD in cinema studies from NYU, and she's an associate professor at the City University's School of Creative Media in Hong Kong. Angela Leung is a multidisciplinary art curator, administrator, and writer. Currently the programs manager of Videotage, she has organized a variety of programs on media art. She has also worked for several film festivals and organized programs, for example, for the Broadway Cinematheque in Hong Kong. She received her bachelor degree in creative media at the City University of Hong Kong in 2009, maybe with Linda, and her master degree of screen art at the Université de Strasbourg in 2016. She's also a researcher and writer on moving images. For example, she co-edited a book on David Lynch and has published articles for the Hong Kong-based news site The Stand News that's focused on social and political issues of Hong Kong, and for the UK-based digital art network Agora Digital on a regular basis. I'm sure that's not covering everything that both of you have done, but this is just a very brief introduction. I think we should start with the beginning. Videotage is the oldest of the three archives that we're presenting in this program. Could you tell us a little bit how Videotage was founded and what the context of its founding was at the time in the late or mid-80s in Hong Kong?
Angel, would you like me to speak to start off?
Yes, I think you're much more familiar with the history.
Not exactly. I was not there from the beginning. Although I should be old enough to be there, but I was really not there. I was elsewhere and in other parts of the world. Well, Videotage was officially founded in 1986, but that was a year about a group of artists with multidisciplinary background artists working together for some years already. I believe starting 1980, 81, 82, it was a new trend of artistic collaboration. It so happened that a lot of the young artists at that time came back from the US, from Europe, from other countries, and they suddenly felt that there is the need to talk across disciplines, artistic disciplines. So they founded an experimental theater group called Zuni Isokahedron. Just a little bit about that history. I think in Hong Kong, the most of the earliest experiments in art happened in theater, and also theater was the first groups that incited the birth of the Hong Kong Arts Development Council. So it was no surprise that in the beginning it was people in the theater. Danny Leung, whose work is also presented in this program, among others. So as far as I remember, there were people who were in modern dance, people who were poets, people who were visual artists doing sculpture, and also people who were in installation, a very, very new art form. And then there were people who were playing with the video camera because the Potterpad allowed more handy cameras to be invented. And so I think Ellen Bao was one of the earliest, and as well as Mei Fong, to switch from experimental film to video. So that was between 82 and 86 when video became more and more important. As far as I know, talking to Ellen, for her, video is very different from the other art forms because it is media. And because it's media, it's connected to popular culture as well. As we all know, media's source is from television, right? And gradually, some of these artists thought it is not enough to just stick together as an experimental theater group. The identity of video needs to come out. And alongside, I think there was a second very important source of influence, which is the presence of the Goethe Institute in Hong Kong, because they were actually bringing in a lot of German video art programs to Hong Kong. Unfortunately, not a lot of people were part of the audience, but the influence was really there. And you can see that a lot of the earlier collaborations with or without the name Videotage were conducted with this German institute. 86, it was decided that it will be a healthy development of the group to extract the video elements from Zuni. And so Videotage was formed. And then the next milestone perhaps should be 1996, I believe. It is like 10 years into the founding of Videotage. They felt they must address a lot of new issues we brought under the umbrella of new media. So the Microwave International Media Arts Festival became a major annual project, also run by the Videotage office and the team. And along this long passage, like 10 years passage, there were major changes. such as the group moving from the status of artist collective, which was the original form coming out of the experimental theater group, gradually into a program creation organization, contact point with a lot of important artists around the world. So you can see that during those early years of microwave, Videotage managed to bring in a lot of very important artists who had impact on Hong Kong. One of them being Jeffrey Shaw, founder of ISAKM, who later on came to Hong Kong to become the Dean of the School of Creative Media. But he first came to Hong Kong because of the microwave. So he's just one among many, many examples. So that was 1996, the year before the handover of Hong Kong to mainland China. The next point, and the rest I think Angel can take up a little bit, would be 2005, 2006, when there was a major decision to take up the microwave component out of Videotage, so that Videotage could keep its mission to promote video art with young artists, and whereas the research and also the programming of new media programs could be dedicatedly done within Microwave Festival. So around 2005 and 6, Microwave became its own company and is now independent of Videotage. And so the story continues there from 2006, where we started to make a lot of regular contacts, collaboration with the rest of the world, encouraging curatorial activities, artist residency, and also gradually building the archive that we now call the VMAC. Angel, come in.
Yes, continuing what Linda has been talking about, actually Videotage, since the point of its formation, besides being an artist collective, the artists have been creating artwork, but actually they have organized different kind of activities such as screening to show their artwork and also artwork from other artists. So Videotage has continued this practice, and we have organized screenings and exhibition, and after we started to adapt to at that time we call new media art, and to other media format, we have different kind of programs and festival. Currently, we don't organize any festival like on annual base or regular base, but before that, Videotage has organized different kind of festival, as well as activities or workshops with local universities. So actually, Videotage has transformed from artist collective into art curatorial organization gradually and in a very organic way. And
I think the
for
other,
example,
which is education. A lot of our effort now is also focusing on education, from conducting activities at Videotage own space to sending out and organizing staff members, which is under Angel's supervision, to schools and different parts of Hong Kong, and sometimes maybe even outside Hong Kong. So as to establish this outreach arm from Videotage.
And when you go to these schools, what is it that you first of all bring with you? Do you show them parts of the archive, or do you teach them more practical elements of video or new media art making?
I can answer this question. For example, our Videotage media collection, so it's a VMAC, it has been organizing school visits or like tour to Videotage on regular basis, that we introduce about the archive, our collections, as well as how they can access the archive with like, I think each tour is about 30 students. So we do it regularly. But also we also organize, and we are planning to expand this part, is to organize workshops and courses with school that we teach the student how to use different media such as video, virtual reality, and social content to as a ways of expression and creation. So we do it both ways.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And maybe you could also, because you've described the history of Videotage so well, maybe you could also go a little bit into a few subjects that Videotage has been dealing with over the years, or that were important to the programming of Videotage, if some come to your mind. I mean, the more recent ones that I saw have to do with virtual reality or with games, for example. But in the 90s, maybe they were different foci. Could you talk a little bit about this?
I believe in the 80s, I think there's one work at least in the program, which is from 1986, right, by Danny Leung. I think the subject matter is not confined to one, but you can see that with, for example, Alan's the work, The Goddess, and also Danny Leung's work. You can always see that there is this impulse to take advantage of a medium that is becoming handier and handier and handier, and connect that to articulations of personal views and response to the society around there. So this program that you have curated happens to be, for me, a very good representation of the thoughts that went into the earliest videographic activities in the 80s. And 86 was the first work that we have in this program. That should be understood against the background of 1984, when the British Chinese joint declaration was signed. So already since 1982, when the conversation started, it was already very tense within Hong Kong society. I think you pick a really good work, because the work that the word dialogue that Danny Leung made is exactly a very indirect way to comment on a very tough situation that we cannot put into words. I believe Alan is also doing that. The other side of social identity, cultural identity that has to do with gender orientation, very difficult to talk about. We don't even have the language. And so there is the need to appeal to popular culture. So you can see there's a lot of synergy between the popular culture, the problems around us, and how to speak safely and cleverly without hitting those hot lines. Goddess is to appeal to popular culture, which is actually part of the Cantonese opera tradition, where you always have this collapse of gender by cross-dressing, as well as women playing men and men playing women, vice versa, which is already part of us. And so there was this Cantonese Capra became this very specific location where gender issue would have a starting point. How long it took us to start, we know it was very long. And one of the actors in Goddess is Yao Jing. She is also making works about the same opera actresses. And then you have Anson Mack's work, which very much focus on language structuring language in order to speak about the need to differentiate, or not to collapse people into just two camps, the homosexual and the heterosexual. But there are all these fine differences that needs to be made. So you can see that the 80s and the early 90s is very much about fighting identity issues, either very micro, personal, or macro that we can't talk about. And that also took us to the point that even into the early and mid-90s, Videotage main players, the stakeholders or the main artists, a lot of them were from the gay and lesbian, now we call GBQT, yes, community. And it was not just a coincidence.
That's
Yes.
Yeah, and then maybe after that, it's more curatorial themes providing the framework. There was the attempts to open itself up to new media. That's why we had the microwave at one point as part of Videotage. And also when Isaac Leung was a manager, he was doing a lot of proactive, reaching out to groups such as the Writing Machine Collective, which is my group, to make sure that more recent computational thinking of art could also be included into Videotage. Then a lot of diary works around 1997, rather than the more essay type works that we saw in your program. Right now, we have more and more personal, highly personal, subjective diary works that are also using lots of symbolism and using analogies and all kinds of audiovisual strategies to make connection with a very problematic world in which we live.
maybe that brings us to the actual archive, because we're talking about archives, and I know that the archive, or what you call now VMAC archive, is only one part of the many activities that you do. But I think it's very interesting that Videotage in the end decided to create this archive and the distribution, of course, which is a very important element of it. And what I find interesting, coming from a visual arts background, that with film and video archives, the distribution is always already included, which is not the case with art collections, of course. And there are big discussions going on here about how accessible art collections should be, how user-friendly they can be, besides the discussion about the decolonization of them. And I think that's why I find it so interesting to include your perspectives from your work into the discussion, because you've been dealing with distributing your works from the very beginning. But maybe you could talk a little bit about why you decided, or Videotage decided at some point to make an official archive of their activities with works that they've been working with or they've been close to, and how one can access this archive as a member of the public.
I'm only trying to summarize some of the factors. Maybe Angel could also contribute a few. I think part of it is because of the ongoing collaboration we have built up over the years with overseas art groups. So there seems to be a growing need to send works and to explain works and to organize works from whether we have the name archive, VMAC or not. We already have a big bulk of works already in place. I think these constant requests out of our collaboration was definitely one reason why we felt there's the need to look into it, organize it, and to make sense of it. The other, partly because of the people who had contributed their works there, especially Ellen and some of the key members from the past, we felt there is really the need to organize our work so that they could be made available. So I think this is a second factor. Third factor to me, which is more important than any other factors, would be that the quest to write our local history outside the main, the dominant discourse of history. And definitely video is a very interesting way and a location to look into. Also, given that a lot of the works we have collected, they have a strong ethnographic or anthropological dimension, as opposed to working mainly on pushing videography towards abstraction. That doesn't seem to be a trend, a very strong trend in the works that we have collected. but more anthropological essay style, video essay style, diary style. So I think it seems this is a very important supplement to the history that we don't have. And not having our own history is a perennial problem in Hong Kong. And this need and this lack, the absence of such a history, becomes a very acute issue in the past 4 years, as you know. So much that happened always ended up in archiving, collecting of objects, collecting narratives, personal stories as opposed to official big stories, etc., etc. So I think for me, who is now, I think Phoebe and I are paying more attention to the VMAC. I did not check with Phoebe, but I'm very sure she and I are on the same page of strong concern about preserving a history that could otherwise be lost or, just gone without our archive. Yeah.
So Phoebe,
Any
Yes.
other? Yes.
just to explain,
As
the chairperson of Videotage, the third protagonist.
yes, as Linda said, that the VMAC, I call it VMAC, has accumulated its early collection along with the history of Videotage. So VMAC was launched in 2008, but actually the archive items were there since the beginning. Like it accumulated with time. So, but the earliest work was there by the beginning of Videotage. I believe the earliest artwork we have collected is from Danny Yeung from 1979. 1986.
79.
I think the earliest one is from 1979.
Right.
So it may not exactly be an artwork or maybe a documentation of Chinese rehearsal or performance, but it formed that way. So from 2008, VMAC was launched and it's continued to expand with our Videotage network as well as our programs in collaboration with different artists. So we hope to grow the archive in an organic way that reflect the cultural and perhaps media art scene in Hong Kong. So we don't have a specific theme for each year what we are going to collect, but we do it through different programs we've done, as well as we hope to collect the artwork that reflect the Hong Kong, the video art and media art in Hong Kong. So it is growing that way, but we are planning to, we have expanded it to a China and a Taiwan collection over the last 2 years. So we are hoping, while centering in Hong Kong, we are hoping to create a larger picture of the region in our archive. As Linda said, to preserve the history of this sector.
Yeah, so I think to preserve the history of an organization is also to preserve the history of practices, artistic practices, cultural practices for Hong Kong. So I think with what Angel just said, we see a kind of a triangle formed. We have a lot of things preserved, stored that requires renovation and preservation and cleaning up and sorting out, etc. And is connected to the educational end of the work, pedagogy, reaching out, etc. And gradually we become more proactive in curating programs. So these works would become part of the archive. So right now we are actually at the junction of many of these such tasks, and it is a very difficult moment for us at this point. Looking at everything that we've got, we also saw a history of media, a history of cameras, I should say, and the storage format and the display format. And all of this created a lot of technical issues for us. So we almost have to go back to learn the older media and find the older machine, or to repair the down and out machines in order to keep our job running. Then there's the more new media end, which is build an archive digitally that could enhance the future input of all the works and etc., and to facilitate search. And so we are right in the middle of all of that. And then as we are still trying to do this, we also felt, China, we have a collection from China. We are in the middle of it. We also have Taiwan, which is completed for its first episode. We might think of other places such as Macau and other destinations from in Asia. So all of this brought us to the current problem, that is how to preserve these works in a time when the freedom to speak is actually narrowing down. And how are we going to share this to the international community before they could be subject to other kinds of restrictions in distribution?
Do you have any reason to think that this might happen in the near future? That with your programs, with your, let's say, LG, homosexual rights focus, and so that will be censored in the near future, if I may ask so directly?
Not exactly that we thought these things would be censored, but the general atmosphere is anything can happen. Anything can become the subject of censorship. And this is so unpredictable that as history told us, any time there is political instability, the cultural arena would often become the first site of interrogation. And so in the name of preserving Hong Kong's heritage and a alternative history, it seems that we could not help but think about it before anything happens. So personally, I'm very scared, and so I must do everything I could. But I think as a historian myself, how am I going to go back to all of this if we don't do anything now? So for me, it's very much historiographically motivated than motivated by fear or anything.
Yeah.
I also believe that artists are very smart. When they talk, they are very resourceful. They can talk in multifarious ways.
Yes.
Yes, and in terms of preservation, I want to go back to a little bit, like Linda said, the artworks has also shown the history of technology, because we have different kind of media in our archive, from like 8mm film to VHS. A large part are in VHS, as well as digital DV tape, mini DV tape. And now we collect our artwork with file already. They are digital born. So we also need to think about preserving this item, not only the videos that now we use as a file, but also the physical object of this
in
item
the original medium.
Yes. So this is another problem that we are facing, how especially VHS or those analog media are very fragile. So we also need to think about how to preserve them as they are.
I think
there's a lot of struggle over here, because many people would think that it's really a digital age. Just keep the digital file. But we were a little bit stubborn in believing that as much as we could, let's keep the original, because that's the medium. And yes, Hong Kong is not the ideal place to to save a lot of media works because of the humidity, the climate, and everything, and the lacking in space. So it is a problem.
Right. Yeah, and this problem, of course, is shared with many video archives that exist over here as well. And it's interesting that now this Archive außer sich project maybe brings some of them together, and these issues could be discussed in a broader network of archives, even though a lot of them, I think, are film archives, but the problems are maybe related. How about the financial situation for this kind of restoration of the old videotapes?
Can you repeat this question again?
Is there any funding for the restoration of the old video formats that you collect? Is there a possibility to receive funding from the official side in Hong Kong?
I can answer that question. Actually, Videotage is funded by Hong Kong Art Development Council. So a part of our funding goes into BMAC. But having a proper and well-equipped archive environment is very expensive. So we received the funding to continue the archive going and expanding the collection. But if we want to fundamentally have a very well-equipped physical space for the items, it is more difficult, especially in Hong Kong. Space is very valuable.
I think another related question would be how do you deal with different formats in terms of the spatial installation? I mean, we talked about different formats in terms of the video technology, but today, of course, many artists are not working with a single screen, but are working in spatial installations. Do you also collect those works, and do you then include instructions of how to install them?
This is actually the next point I wanted to bring up, which is our problem. I think we're already overwhelmed by the number of tapes or single channel video works that we have collected over the years. Definitely that has always been in our mind, and always we're trying to bring this, squeeze it into our agenda in the board meeting. That is, we are not opening up at all to non-single channel video works, and we are very aware of it. Not only are some of them installations, but some of them are computational work, programmed work that requires a very different kind of format. And not to say the more heavy gear kind of work like immersive media, virtual reality. This requires a lot of gears. We are not there yet, unfortunately, but we are very much looking forward to move into this domain. And it will be tough, but it is always at the back of our mind. But this is also connected to a different question, which is my own critique of Videotage, that it has maintained an overwhelming attention to video, but not really the general domain of new media art. And hopefully this would also change. And right now we don't have a lot of so-called new media art work. And so the storage problem is not acute for now, but it will be very, very soon when we start to become more embracing.
Yes, and actually we cannot like accommodate every art installation that we have, that we want to. But for example, actually we have stored up to, I think, over 50 CRT TV, and 20 of them are actually from the artwork of Leung, the video circle. I think in one of the remakes we had in a few years ago. So we we don't have like systematically how to preserve their installation. We have asked the artists, like for example, if the artwork meant to be shown in an installation, how to install it, all the specs, etc. But if the situation allowed that we have to, we had stored some of the parts that we know that if we don't do it, it will go to the trash. For example, the CRT TV. So we do whatever we can, like that the situation allows us to do.
Maybe it would be interesting to define a little bit what then today for you are new media artworks, and does that include all art that's being produced in the visual arts context, if you want, or do you draw a line somewhere? I know it's very difficult to draw a line. It's practically impossible today. For example, the newest piece that we're showing in this film program is by Samson Young, who's very much also known in a visual arts context. How do you deal with these different contexts, or does it even matter? Or how do you make your decisions what to include in a new media art archive?
I think this question is good for invoking a debate and disagreement rather than for a very clear definition of sorts. However, I feel that we are not starting out with a very clear textbook like structure in order to decide what to do and what not to do. I think from like Videotage had always been from the very beginning, whatever comes from artists who claim themselves to be media artists and what they do, we recognize as, I think this is the easiest philosophical approach to the question of what is new media art. However, I want to say that I do always fight for a differentiation, and I did that a lot in my own writing. That there is, whether you call it new or not, it doesn't matter, but there is a need to draw a line between media art and non-media art, which could be just visual art or whatever. For me, media art must fulfill one very important criteria, and this would be more for an academic conversation, but this academic conversation is also to define where else to look, what other kinds of artists to look for, and whether at one point we want to play a more pioneering role. And I think we are not playing that role. And what is this definition? Like the common denominator of all definitions that you can find in existing literature. For me, it has to be about the fact that what you see in front of you as the artwork is not a direct reflection or direct correspondent with the work process. I think this has to be very important. And I like to use a line that I created for one of the Writing Machine Collective shows, which says, what you read is not what we write. And that involves a very basic criteria to video art, which is the ultimate presentation could look like a story, could look like a film, could look like a video with content. But how it is being prepared, there is always a black boxing portion of this work process in which some of the skills are not even a mimetic correspondence to what we see ultimately. I think we can even think of some artistic historical examples like Nam June Park's works in the 1960s, that how he created images on the screen is not by shooting, it's not by asking this image to correspond to anything in the real world, which is the figurative art tradition, right? What he did was basically to point a camera, several cameras to very different things, and just maybe get the color scheme or get the scan line and just mix them. And interfere with the signal transmission before it became the final work. And I think this kind of thinking is not necessary, but it is really the spirit, the central idea of media art, that there is this mediation process. So I think my assessment is that not a lot of Hong Kong people are thinking about media art this way. And it doesn't matter. But in order to maximize our use of the facilities and the resources we have, and also in order not to fall out of the big data environment, which is coming and overwhelming us, we better speed up a little bit to reconsider other modes of creation. That is to think of these tools, especially computation, as an artistic medium itself, not just a tool. And also that's a very different set of resources that we often overlook. And so I am more critical about Videotage than only just confirming it, and very much I like Videotage and I support it. And critically, I think there's so much we haven't done, and we are a little bit behind a lot of things.
Actually, I want to follow up what Linda said to answer this question. Actually, for Videotage, from the very beginning, the artists were trying to use some newly discovered media. Like, for example, in the 80s, it was the domestic video. And then in the 90s, start with computers and digital, and that we call new media art that has expanded dramatically after year 2000. So recently we have been doing programs with different kinds of media. For example, we have a artist residency program on Minecraft on a gaming platform. Actually, technically, it is not very complicated from our side because we just use the platform, but we want to see, especially in this pandemic environment, how a residency can be carried out on a gaming platform, but not traditionally virtual space like a virtual tour or a website or a blog. So this is how we started with the idea of the Live Your Body residency program on Minecraft. And so actually, this is not like we sat to, we want to develop this, we want to develop that, but also we actually in response to the environment, what kind of technologies are available and people are interested in them to make artwork. So it is very organic. It developed very organically from the very beginning, and from the 80s to nowadays. We have been doing in the same way. Actually, it is what excited at in terms of technology and how people use them to make artwork, and we respond to that.
Maybe that brings me to another question. If over the time there were ever any links to, for example, and now I'm coming with this, which I also wanted to ask you, Linda, because you've mentioned it in another talk that I saw, if there were ever any links between the new media art scene in Hong Kong and the Hong Kong movie production world, or transferring it to today, are there links, in these kind of new media art projects that maybe work with computational thinking to companies or other types of development, startups, and so on? Is that an issue that you're dealing with or have been dealing with in the past?
I think I don't have a problem really thinking that we should go into these directions, but it is also a matter of focus and when to bring in what. I believe that at this point, there is maybe something in addition to thinking of technology-driven refreshment of creativity. There is also, on a more conceptual level, thinking away from artwork as a work to art as an event. So I think the example that Angel just mentioned about the Minecraft, and also some of the the activities are important, not because of the content, but because of its presence in the social media platform and how it generates a community and how we started new conversations. I think more and more, before we can conquer this problem of computational art, there is this bit that we also want to step into. And I think we're already doing something like this. In fact, I think at one point we were more thinking of working with YouTubers and also using, explore more of the social media platform, and even how to use a Zoom platform like this to think of it not just as like a contingent event, but as a regular thing. So I think these things are, for me, highly important in a time when we should not just isolate art forms, one genre from the next, from medium from the next, but we should think of it as a sorry, there was an interruption. To think of it as a media arts event. On the side, I felt, well, I feel that as a board member of Videotage, I should not just push my own idea and critique into this, because my job as a Videotage board member is to take care of what is going on and the good things that has been on and how to make it better, and what is the next possible step from the achievements that we have made. So my answer to your question is, I collaborated a lot with computational art people. So I am also curating my own shows. Highly sophisticated artists come in to discuss with me works that explore the intersection of art and technology, but also art and science. The Writing Machine Collective that I founded is for that purpose, because I think you can't make the entire Hong Kong population interested in computational art when we are still going to school, being asked, do you want to be in the humanities or do you want to be in the science? As long as this split in our general education remains, there's no way we can overcome. I believe this is a little bit different in Germany, in Europe, and also maybe in the US. But in Hong Kong, it's a clear split. And I experience it a lot in my own teaching at the School of Creative Media. That there's a lot of preparation, a lot of undoing, unlearning to happen. So my only response to you, I'm very diligent. So I use my own resources, my own other roles and other occasions to push what I think should be pushed, but also step by step. And when the time comes, it can come together. But in fact, the Writing Machine Collective exhibitions have taken place in Videotage in the past, because the former manager and then chairman, Isaac Leung, saw that the writing machine concept should take place in Videotage. But I'm not promoting anything. I'm just saying that these things are always difficult to solve. But yes, I think you asked a very important question that we should keep pursuing. Yes, and collaboration with more people.
Maybe a last question that is related. You mentioned that it's important for an organization also to create online events to be present, in the digital realm. One of the things I wanted to discuss with all the archives is also how they develop formats that work in the digital realm only. Of course, we all have been forced to do this in the Corona lockdown times more than before, but I think you as an institution that's already dealing with digital formats per se is maybe a bit more aware of how to approach this new line of institutional kind of public, or this new type of public that institutions want to reach out to. So my question would be, do you develop formats that are particularly taking place in the digital realm? And also, did you try, what kind of audiences are you trying to reach? Maybe also with regard to not just Hong Kong, but beyond Hong Kong, a broader international network.
Want to take it up?
Yes, actually we have organized a lot of programs in digital format, especially this year. We organize many screenings online through website instead of in a theater setting. And also we had an exhibition in New York in March, but it is a physical exhibition, but it turned into a virtual tour because of the outbreak. So we are adapting to using the digital format in presenting artwork, and I see it a very positive way. For example, we do the Minecraft residency. Actually, it forced us to think about something that we maybe wanting to do it for a very long time, but we never go that way. So, and actually the world becomes smaller in some sort of ways because we are relying on the internet for exchange, or like for example in this talk we are talking from 3 different spaces. So we are adapting that format as well, but somehow I don't think we are like giving up the physical format or using the virtual format to substitute the physical format when the situation allows us to do things in real life, because I think some interaction with the space or some artworks that require you see it in especially designed space, it is not easily replaced by virtual experience. So we are adapting to different things, especially now we are trying to do more with social media instead of only using it as a promotional platform, but is can we do things or make things on social media network? We are starting to think about and work on this as well, but I think in the long run we will go both ways, physical and virtually.
Maybe what I can add is that is at this point in terms of using the social media platform, I think we are not really making any concrete plans or projecting anything, nor are we doing anything infrastructural to what we have. But there is more the urgency to think of how to preserve our data. So I think I can say that in the past 1 year, the biggest discussion on our table in our board meeting would be to how to find an overseas VPN to house our data in order that it can be subject to any kind of inventive, creative deployment on any kind of platform. So I think that is more what we are doing, how to save data. And as the story we have been telling reviews, we are also thinking of data not only as files, but also as physical copies. So this is for us a very urgent thing. In terms of how to turn this platform, for example, the Zoom meeting that we're having, into a more general activity, I have done that outside Videotage several times. In fact, there was a meeting I conducted with 15 artists from several countries together. And we just share videos and we critique each other's video. And we did it 4 times. So it's a total of like 4 to 5 hours. And no problem. We were so happy that we couldn't go to each other's country, but we can still watch each other's work and we can share screen. We can even draw diagrams when we are talking. So all I want to say is I have already had very positive experience that encouraged me not to be fearful if the social media platform is going to be the platform. Yes, it's not perfect, but it doesn't matter.
Does the political development in the region, the closer links to China, does that also change something in terms of your audience? I mean, you've already said that you're reaching out more, or that you're including artists from Taiwan, from China, from Macau, and so on into the archive. What about the audience? Will that change, or has it always been very broad in the past?
For Minecraft, we are having 4 local art practitioners for the first edition, who are Mark Ying Chung Chu, Peter Nelson, Cosman Costinus, and Frog King. So they're local, or they're in Hong Kong right now. So this is the first edition, but we are planning to expand the Minecraft project to wide, like organically. The second edition will be with TCAC, that we will put TCAC in the virtual space and collaborate with them. But actually, we don't have an agenda of what next or which region we are going to expand that project. It is very organic to reach out with different organizations if they are interested in this project. So this is the how we are doing with that right now. But actually, in the past, Videotage has been working also not like focusing in the West or more in the region right now. We have been working with organization or having exhibition or screening and project in China and Taiwan, in different places in the world. We have the project both signed now with the UK for 6 years now. And also, even with both signed now, we have some exhibition in China as well, or residency. So we cannot say that, oh, we are going to develop this way or that way, but actually it's just a network developed very organically.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm getting here signs that we are way over time, but maybe we can, I mean, it doesn't matter since there's no audience, but maybe we could briefly speak about the last 2 artists that we invited to participate in the program with works. Anson Mack in particular, I think you've done an exhibition with her. Could you speak a little bit about her work maybe, just very briefly?
And Anson started very, very early in the 90s. The work you have picked for the show gives us a very good glimpse of several things going on at that time. It was the moment when the gay and lesbian movement at that time, that's how they called it at that time, and then the bi movement, the queer movement, was very much on the street and becoming more and more visible. So Anson was working on that. And Anson being a member of a band, and she's the main singer, everything to her is a music video. And so you can see that in this work too, she always gives that dimension of giving work a musical dimension. But she's also in a lot of the works that I have known, because I worked with her for a while at the School of Creative Media and know a certain phase of her work. For her, there's always something, an argument she's making to defend the use of text, words, sentences, yes, in video art. And this is not something like all artists agree with, but she is very good at using puns and all of that to make sure that text has a very unique place in a video, and also whether it is Cantonese, German, or English, or 普通话, they're not going to be replaceable. So this question of translatability of languages marks a lot of her work. So you always see several types of languages on the screen, and you don't expect yourself to understand everything, but some of it. And then there's always a strange relation between the images and the work. I believe that work was made at a time when she is using both high 8 and the early phase of mini DV tape, and she likes to play with that kind of texture. So this work is very typical of a lot of the works in which language and also the politics of language has to be part of the work, and which is a quality that I think would put her and Danny Young's face on the same stool. Because Danny also too, this work and also another work he made 1 or 2 years ago called Memorandum of a Rock. These are all using serialist methods to replace certain aspects of a phrase and to just play with it. And all of them are critiquing the image that we saw in a very kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of way. Samson's work, I actually showed that work in Spain one time. It's part of a series, and he is very much into exploring sound. So sound art is his thing, and in that work he asked important question about what if we step back from synchronization, which is almost like the norm in cinema, synchronization, image and speech. And we hear movement, we are supposed to hear a certain type of sound. And what if the sound is removed? So this became a kind of challenge to both us and the people who are doing the lion dance. Because lion dancers rely a lot on the drums that is audible. And now there is it's almost like a workshop to retrain the lion dancers, that the rhythm is inside them, is within this art form, not in the drums that provoke the movement. And for us, without the sound, we start to hear sound better by just looking at the movement. I just want to add one thing that for Ellen, I think people just look at the work for its gender issues, but what touched me a lot with Ellen's early works is it's very manual. He only did the work with like 2 VCR and like one tape, copy to another one, and then she was not doing it with any real machine. But so it is very, very impressive for me that for her at her age. That's why I felt when I look at current practices, I think there's something lost that I saw in the early Ellen Bao works, that he used machines, but then he used it in a very manual way. And the editing is very complicated because it's just like rolling tape from one machine to the next and rolling back. And I think that should be highlighted.
That works very well with the title Videotage, no?
Yeah. Right.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you to Times Art Center Berlin for hosting this talk.
Sure.
Thank you to both of you for taking the time in the evening.
No problem. Our pleasure.
Thank
Next
you.
time we can meet in person.
Sure. I hope the coronavirus would come down really soon.
Yes.
I'm not sure entirely.